Aric Almirola, after all, might be returning to the Cup Series on a full-time basis in 2023, and Rich Host Racing made their major announcement yesterday. What's going on, guys? This is Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. We're going to start our paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Ryan Vargas' 2022 Experience in Jackson scheme that I believe we're going to be seeing this weekend at Michigan. Pretty solid scheme in my opinion. I love the yellowish and like bluish colors. They have one on the whitish colors as well. I think this paint scheme looks really solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack here this weekend at Michigan. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Harrison Burton's 2022 20-year Senior Master Technician scheme they're going to see this weekend at Michigan. I absolutely love this paint scheme. Colors work absolutely great on this car. It does a lot of great sponsor utilization. It is an amazing looking paint scheme, and I'm excited to see it on the racetrack this weekend at Michigan. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Dillon's 2022 Dow Mobility Science scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Michigan. Pretty good looking scheme in my opinion. Love that Dow is back in the NASCAR Cup Series. I don't think Dow has sponsored this much for Kyle Busch. This one looks really awesome. Gives me a throwback to his scheme back in like 2014, 2015. It looks good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brandon Jones' 2022 Praetorian Appliances Menard scheme they're going to see this weekend at Michigan. Well, there's not much to say here. In fact, the only thing that's different is got Praetorian Appliances on there with the blue shade on the front, which I think it actually works really well on this car. I think it looks solid, and hopefully I'll have a good run in this car this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2022 Martin Transportation System scheme they're going to see this weekend at Michigan. Pretty awesome looking scheme in my opinion. I like the red and the black on it. I think it contrasts really well, and it looks really awesome, and Michael McDowell's scheme looks great. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Mason Massey's 2022 Pro Set scheme you're going to see this weekend at Michigan. I like the green on the car, honestly. I love that it's basically just green, and there's not much going on with it, which I sometimes like simplicity. Sometimes oversimplicity is an issue, but I think this works really well, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Michigan. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lewis Hamilton. As it was announced yesterday that Lewis Hamilton is going to be joining the ownership group for the Denver Broncos. This is really big. I don't know if this is the first time or not that we've seen a Formula One driver become an ownership of an NFL team. So I think it's amazing to see we've got Lewis Hamilton now getting involved in the ownership group for the Denver Broncos. This is a massive for sure. And Denver Broncos just got a big name to sponsor their brand. And basically, you could probably get that UK audience. So I know there's a lot of UK NFL fans. With Lewis Hamilton joining the group, you're going to have a lot of UK fans who are going to support Lewis Hamilton. So congratulations to Lewis on that. And this is really awesome to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stewart Haas Racing. As Stewart Haas Racing made some big executive announcements yesterday. Brent Fruit will be moving away and will become the commissioner of the National Lacrosse League, but he will still be part of the Stewart Haas Racing Group as someone who's running it. Brian McKinley will become the Chief Sales Officer for Stewart Haas Racing, and Greg Zippy will become the Chief Competition Officer for the organization. A lot of times, of course, around this time, we're going to start seeing a lot more teams making major executive changes as we get ready to head into the 2023 season. I think it's great to see Stewart Haas Racing is making these moves, though, and I think some of these executive moves are great. Congratulations to all of them on these really awesome executive moves. This is really awesome and very cool to see, in my opinion. Really awesome to see for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Cody Coughlin. As Cody Coughlin is making his official return to racing and will be making his return to ARCA this weekend at Michigan. I believe this will be the first time we've seen Cody Coughlin race in any form of racing in NASCAR's top divisions or ARCA since 2018 when he drove for GMS in the number 2 truck. Really awesome to see Cody Coughlin coming back. I think he has maybe 1 or 2 ARCA wins if I'm not mistaken, so it's good to see he's basically coming out and once again racing in the ARCA series. I think it's great to see for sure, and I'm wishing him the best of luck. He's got a pair, I think, a 14th place finish at best at the track, so he's hoping to improve in his family's own car. I wish they will have a good run this weekend. Hopefully really well in the series. And now we're going to go ahead and draw to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Busch. as Kyle Busch this past weekend ended up finishing 11th, and he finished outside the top 10 for the 7th straight race, which is the most he's ever had in times in a row where he's ever finished outside the top 10. Now, it needs to be noted that Kyle Busch did end up crossing the line second at Pocono, but got penalized, and that's why he ended up finishing last instead of finishing in second like he probably should have. That being said, though, I think it's crazy to see that Kyle Busch, and he just shows that Kyle Busch really has been struggling this year. There's been so many races this year where Kyle Busch has really struggled, and the races have not gone well. So it makes a lot of sense why the struggles again. We still don't know where he'll be driving in 2023 currently. We do not have a clue where he'll be driving, so we're still kind of waiting on that at this moment. But it sucks Kyle Busch isn't running as well, but it is what it is. Hopefully things can improve for Kyle Busch going down the road. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Race Team Alliance. As the Race Team Alliance, according to Bob Pockers, for the first time, in all counts, every organization that owns a charter as a member of the Race Team Alliance. They said last year, Row Motorsports, Trackhouse, and I believe Live Fast as well, have joined since this past year into the Race Team Alliance. I think also 2311 joined that organization and group as well. And it's good to see Race Team Alliance succeeding. It's just basically because, again, there's been some teams have been trying to get in, some teams have been not trying to get in. So it's good to see now that every single team is officially part of the Race Team Alliance in NASCAR. I think it's better to have everybody in the same group. Good to see for sure, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Race Team Alliance. I understand why it's a thing, and I get why it's a thing. So every team now is part of the Race Team Alliance. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Lori Lightfoot. As Adam Stern reported a couple days ago, that Lori Lightfoot says that this is the first venture that NASCAR has done in an urban environment. And basically, she went out and defended what NASCAR basically is doing in the Chicago Street Course, and she said down the road, this event could see 20 times more revenue coming in than Lollapalooza, and she thinks it could be very successful. Now, of course, some people I think you still have to prove this, even though it's already been announced. Some people do have to prove this. But I can see why Lori Lightfoot's trying to defend it. It's a big series. It's big for NASCAR. Of course, if it does end up happening, it will be the first street course race in NASCAR Cup Series history. In fact, I think the first street course race in NASCAR's top 3 divisions. There's a lot of talk also that the Xfinity Series might be racing out this next year as well, but nothing has been confirmed at this time. That being said, though, I get why she's defending it. It's great to see she's defending it. So hopefully the race will go off without hitch and there won't be any problems with it. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Logan Sargeant. As it was announced yesterday, that Logan Sargeant is going to be taking part in FP1 test in Austin for Williams. This will be the first time Logan Sargeant has been taking part of an FP1 test, as it is required. And I believe every driver in Formula 1 has to give up their seat to one of the upcoming drivers when it comes to doing races. This is so cool to see that basically Logan Sargeant is getting a test. Of course, Logan Sargeant is a development driver for Williams, but he's also been doing extremely well in Formula 2 this year. He scored 2 wins already this year in Formula 2, and there's a lot of rumors and rumors that Logan might be potentially a candidate to go to Formula 1. In fact, there is a big announcement coming from Williams here in the next couple hours. By the time you're watching this, Williams already made that announcement, though. There are indications that it's going to go to Alex Albon. I'm glad to see that Logan's getting some opportunities to get some experience. I think that's great for sure, and happy to see that Logan is getting some experience in that car, and hopefully he'll have an opportunity to do really well in that car. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about motorsports viewership for this weekend. So, of course, Adam Stern always puts up every weekend the motorsports viewership, and for the Cup Series at the Indianapolis Road Course, it got a 2.05 rating and 3.373 million viewers. For the Hungarian GP for Formula 1, it got a 0.63 rating and 1.249 million viewers. And then for the IndyCar race, it got a 0.67 rating and 1.046 million viewers. Honestly, really glad to see that at least the Cup Series did well. I think it was up. They said it was up this year about 18-19% from last year. And I was wondering if the race was going to succeed or not. And it seems like people probably want it, so I think the Indy Road Course is here to stay. Those are really good numbers, and it seems like NASCAR is starting to kind of head back in a much better direction when it comes to the ratings department, even on the road courses, which, again, road courses generally don't do well. The race got 3.37, so that's really solid for a road course race on the big networks. For F1 in Hungary, basically seeing 1.294 million viewers, that's really solid right there. And then for IndyCar, seeing 1.046 on Saturday afternoon on NBC, that's pretty good numbers all things considered. So that's the Motorsports viewership for this weekend, and honestly, the numbers are pretty solid. And now we're going to go ahead and draw to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to continue talking about ratings, and we're going to talk about F1 ratings from 2022 so far. So according to this, as they head into the summer break, Adam Stern put out a report yesterday, and what it says is the average TV ratings are at a 1.3 million from Formula One. That is up from a 934,000 in viewership in 2021. This is a massive, massive jump. I believe that is a 34 or 35% increase from last year. And it shows that Formula One is continuing to grow. Even if some races aren't doing as well as others, we're seeing an average of races doing really well in Formula One. And I think a lot of this is due to the fact that Formula One is growing in the United States consistently right now. We're seeing every race jump up in double-digit averages of percentages, and it's amazing to see Formula One continue to grow. Will it continue to grow a long time? That will be determined, but I think those ratings are really, really solid, and I'm happy to see the ratings are really good for this race, in my opinion. Very happy to see that for sure, and the ratings are really solid. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dylan Bassett. As Dylan Bassett is going to drive the 77 for Bassett Racing this weekend at Michigan. This, I believe, will be Dylan Bassett's second or third attempt in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, and it's not a surprise considering it's the Bassett Racing team. I've had both the Bassett drivers driving. Now, they actually did make, or I believe they were able to make the race at Road America or a couple weekends after that, but it's been kind of a strong year so far for the Bassett Racing organization. But Dalton has talent. I think the goal is just to make the field. If they can do that, I think they could have a really strong run. Hope he's able to have a good run in the 77. If he's able to make the field, there are 3 that are going home in the Xfinity Series race, so hopefully he's able to make the show. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Blaine Perkins. As Blaine Perkins is going to drive a 0-2 for Row Motorsports this weekend at Michigan. Of course, it's already been announced that Brett Moffitt will not be returning to Row Motorsports for the rest of the season, as they have agreed to part ways. This means that Blaine Perkins will be taking the 0-2 car, I believe, for the rest of the season, starting this weekend at Michigan. Blaine Perkins, I'm not sure how he's going to do, to be honest. He did have some decent races in Xfinity last year with Row, but he really struggled in the Truck Series this year. He's been running horrendously, but that's what happens when you have a sponsorship model where sponsorship matters more than driver talent. Hopefully Blaine can do really, really well, but I don't expect him to have the same equal runs that we've seen from other drivers at the scene. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jordan Anderson. As Jordan Anderson is going to drive a 32 for his own organization in the Xfinity Series this weekend at Michigan. This will actually be the first time a Jordan Anderson racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series has had 2 cars on the racetrack at the same time, but of course this car will have to attempt to qualify into the race. I think Jordan's got the talent to get it done. It seems like this year this team's had a little bit of a down year compared to last year when they had a bunch of other Cup drivers driving it. But I do believe that this team's got potential, and I hope Jordan can do really, really well. Ultimately, I think the goal for Jordan is to get out there and make the race and do good enough in the car. So hopefully he'll do good enough to make the show and make the race as well. Hope he's able to get that done, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Fernando Alonso. As it was announced on Monday morning that Fernando Alonso is going to be moving away from Alpine and will be driving for Aston Martin in 2023. And according to reports, it is a multi-year deal with Aston Martin. This is definitely a major, major shock, considering that Fernando Alonso we all thought was going to be staying at Alpine for the next couple years, and he has said that he was going to be really committed with Alpine. And Amar Sazanair was also really shocked as well, thought he basically was in boat on Greece, but literally Fernando was basically racing go-karts and gave a thumbs up with the other situation that we're going to get into really, really shortly. I'm not really sure how Fernando's going to do with this move. Hopefully Aston Martin is going to improve next year, because they have absolutely struggled so far in 2022. Hoping with Fernando being there, they can improve. Again, Fernando Alonso being the champion of the sport of Formula One and winning a lot of races in Formula One, you would think that Fernando can go in there and fix the issues with the team, but really at this point, we don't know what's going to happen. I wish Fernando, though, the best of luck in that ride. He will do the best he can, and hopefully they can help Lance to improve, and hopefully he can be a little better than what Sebastian's done. Though it sucks that Sebastian's retiring, but Fernando, I think, could be a really good candidate to help replace, and hopefully he can do a really good job helping this organization, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Bubba Wallace. Now, There has been a massive debate on what happened on the last couple restarts of the race at the Indy Road Course. And a lot of people are questioning why Bubba Wallace, who went through the grass, did not get a penalty. Well, Bob Pockers put out a pretty cool explanation in regards to this and basically had an explanation on what happened on the last lap, saying he kind of got forced wide off the racetrack, and then NASCAR basically gave Harrison Burton a position back and Bubba right behind him. So many people basically saying that Bubba Wallace should have gotten the same penalty that Ross Chastain got because he cut the course, but really Bubba was trying to avoid an accident in that situation, and I cannot believe people really think that he was not trying to avoid an accident right there. He literally was clearly trying to avoid an accident. He wasn't trying to get involved in one because there was a big accident happen thanks to Joey Logano trying to bonsai move with 7 wide on the bottom, and Bubba was trying to avoid potentially getting wrecked in that situation. Look, I understand that people don't like Bubba Wallace, but it's just, it is what it is, and the explanation, he should not have gotten penalized in that situation. I'm glad that he basically did not get penalized for that, because in my opinion, there was no reason to have a penalty for that situation, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dale Jr. As Dale Jr.'s late model that he will be running at North Wilkesboro at the end of the month has been officially revealed, and it's going to be a throwback to his original 3-Sun drop car that he ran back in the mid to early 1990s. This is incredible to see, and we're going to be talking about North Wilkesboro here very, very shortly. But Dale Jr.'s car looks absolutely incredible, and it's amazing to see that he's going to be running an iconic 3-car course, a little bit homage to his dad, Dale Earnhardt. But it's amazing to see that we're going to see Dale Jr. back in the 3-car North Wilkesboro at the end of the season, because I believe Dale Jr. will be getting behind the wheel of this car on August 30th and August 31st, if I'm not mistaken. So it's amazing to see for sure. Really happy to see that Dale Jr. is getting behind the wheel of the 3-Sun drop car. Hopefully, Dale Jr. can have a really strong run in this car and go out there and win. I think he will be a contender to win races in the late model, but we'll see what happens in the car. I know that he's got people that are going to be racing for him at this event as well. Hopefully, Dale Jr. can do really well in the 3-Sun drop car. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about North Wilkesboro last night. North Wilkesboro last night opened up for the first time in many, many years. In fact, the first time cars have been on track since 2011. And just take a look at this crowd. The crowd for the first night sold out. Ryan Newman ended up winning, and also they had the youngest winner in North Wilkesboro history, I believe Paul Hartwig, the third or second, at 11 years old, went out to win in the car. This crowd, by the way, though, going back to that, looks absolutely amazing. And if you want this track to stay long-term, you make sure you show up. And honestly, in my honest opinion, people showed up. And I think that you're going to be seeing crowds like this every single night. The fact on the first night they already sold out shows that, one, people are craving for North Wilkesboro to come back, and people want it back. And I'm so happy to see people are showing up to North Wilkesboro and going to the event as a whole. I think it's amazing to see for sure, and just seeing the energy. There's so many Big Pete personnel there and media members there. They're probably going to talk about this weekend at this upcoming race in Michigan, talk about this as well. I think this is amazing to see for sure, and I'm happy to see that we got to see cars return on track for the first time in over a decade. And now we're going to head and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Logano. Now, Joey Logano was basically on his own show, I believe it's called Behind the Wheel, if I'm not mistaken, and Joey Logano was talking about what happened with Ross Chastain on the last lap. And Ross Chastain, basically on the final restart, remember, he got a massive, massive penalty. Well, Joey Logano believes that Ross Chastain should not have gotten penalized for a move. He says that he finished second in his opinion, and he says that basically Ross's move was a really good move to use the access road. I have to somewhat agree and somewhat disagree. Now, NASCAR has a lot of drivers have been exposing the road course rules that NASCAR's had this year. There's been a lot of exposing of the NASCAR rules. But I do believe that in the drivers' meeting, I thought they basically said he can't go through there, but I could be entirely wrong. I don't think Ross Chastain should have won the race or even should have finished second. I think that NASCAR itself made the right call, but I anticipate that NASCAR will probably have an access line rule going into next year. That's what I'm anticipating. Look, Joey Logano made a 7-8 wide bonsai move and caused a massive incident. And if he made that move again, it could have caused problems. And I think Chastain, he was trying to avoid potentially getting wrecked. He didn't even try to make the corner. If he tried to make the corner and went through the access road, that would make a lot more sense. But I can see where Joey Logano is coming from, and I can see where people that are defending Ross are really coming from in this situation. So I get it and understand, but at the same token, at the same time, rules are the rules, and you do have to follow them. But there's some things you can agree with, and some things that you might not be able to agree with, but sometimes we can agree to disagree in certain situations. And now we're going ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Aric Palou. Now, we've been following this Aric Palou case really closely, and we've got an update on the Aric Palou situation. According to reports that came out on Monday morning, attorneys for the IndyCar champ Aric Palou have moved to the fight for his contract, want it moved to federal court instead of being in Marion County Court. Now, why are they trying to move this from the Marion County Court where Chip Ganassi Racing is sued? Because remember, we talked about this, how Chip Ganassi Racing announced that they were going to be suing Aric Palou for this move. Why they want this in federal court? Well, there's obvious reason why they want in federal court. I'm not someone who's worked in legal cases, but from what I heard, basically, what is being said is that they want to move this to federal court so they can get a more favorable outcome. Because you think about where they are, where the case is in Marion County, Indiana. And guess what you have in a lot of Indiana? A lot of racing personnel, and a lot of people probably work for Chip Ganassi who have worked under the Chip Ganassi banner. So it makes a lot of sense why they want to move the case over into a different area. Now, will they get it moved to a different area instead of Marion County into federal court? That's going to be a stretch. I really don't know if it's going to be moved, to be honest. But I just think it's crazy to see that we have a situation where we have one driver saying they're going here and other there, which we got that coming up here in a little bit. I think it's just crazy to see that it's turned into this, and it's nutty for sure, but it's not a big surprise considering this is kind of what a lot of people expected, is a lot of chaos for sure. Kind of a lot going on right now in the industry. And just crazy to see that we have a situation where we got this going on and other situations we'll talk about in the near future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Hunter Nemechek. Now, we definitely have a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to the Door Bumper Clear podcast. The first thing we're talking about is who originally was going to be the reserve driver. According to what Denny Hamlin said, Hunter Nemechek was actually the original reserve driver before the season started for 2311 Racing, and actually in January they had planned for Hunter to be the original reserve driver. But there have been some changes that have been made, and Hunter was not going to be it, and Ty Gibbs was then changed to become the reserve driver. Could you imagine Hunter in the 45 car, which a lot of people thought that Hunter would be going to 2311 Racing last year instead of Kurt Busch at one point? I think it's great, though, that Hunter was considered. I think a lot of people realize how good of a driver Hunter Nemechek is. Can it be over-aggressive? Yes, but Hunter has a lot of Cup Series experience. And honestly, I think he would have been probably a better reserve driver. But I understand what Joe Gibbs is doing right here. They're trying to get Ty Gibbs as much experience as possible. But it's crazy to see, basically, they made some changes. I think Joe Gibbs really played a factor. Because remember, they also have a major technical alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing. So it would make a lot of sense with Joe Gibbs basically made that decision and said, you know what, you're going to have Ty Gibbs in this car instead. And Denny was probably like, okay, we'll have him in the car instead of that. Not a big surprise here, in my opinion. But again, it would have been cool to see Hunter get behind the wheel of this car, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about road courses. Now, there was an article that was written, I believe, by Nathan Brown from the Indy Star, someone from the Indy Star, and Adam Stern basically quoted out there. And one of the quotes he said from the article says that road courses says, "I've seen enough ovals. Fans embrace changes to road course. Seen enough road courses. Basically, fans embrace change of road course for NASCAR race at IMS." Now, I guarantee you most people are not wanting less road courses, and I guarantee most people really want the oval to stick around and going back to the Indianapolis Oval. There's a lot of fans who have been craving on both sides. I've been following this debate really closely when it comes to this, and one thing that I've generally suggested, and I've suggested this multiple times on social media, but one thing that I've suggested is basically they have an alteration. They have 1 year they go to the road course, which they're doing that for 2023, and then the next year they go to the oval in 2024. That's what I think that they should propose doing instead of just doing what they've been doing, going to road course. I think it should alter. I think it gets both fans really happy. But I don't agree with the fact that there are fans saying that they don't want road courses. Trust me when I say this. I think road course racing is amazing. I know this year with the next gen car, there have been some problems, but I know that NASCAR can definitely fix that for sure and fix those problems for sure. So I understand where a lot of fans are coming from. I get it. Fans are not as big fan of road courses for sure. But trust me when I say this, road course racing I think is a very solid thing for sure. And I hope we do continue to have a lot more road course on the schedule going forward, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Front Row Motorsports. As Front Row Motorsports announced yesterday, they have gone ahead and dropped their appeal. And starting this week, Chris Vergierges is going to be serving as the interim crew chief for Michael McDowell. Of course, we already talked about this. From Row Motorsports got a massive 100-point penalty that dropped them from 20th to 26th points. They made up a ton of points this past week, and it's still very possible that front right now, Michael Mcdowell could be getting back up into around the 19th to 20th points, considering how strong he has been this year, with 9 top 10s so far in 2022, a record for him so far in his NASCAR Cup Series career. It makes a lot of sense they've gone ahead and dropped their appeal, though, considering they weren't going to win the appeal most likely. I think the big reason why they tried to appeal is so they could be at the road course race, so Michael could have the best shot at winning. We'll see what happens this week. I hope they continue to have the same momentum and speed. It seemed like they had the same momentum and speed this past week, but again, there's also a possibility they could have been doing the same thing they've been doing, but I'm not sure if they would have really been doing the same thing they were doing. So I think it's awesome to see for sure that, well, not awesome, but it's good to see that basically they realize, hey, you know what? We probably were going to get caught anyways. We probably were not going to win this appeal anyways. And I think it makes a lot of sense for them to go ahead and just drop the appeal that they had. It makes a lot of sense for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Grey Guys. Now, Grey Guys was on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio on Monday, and Grey Guys talked about the lack of respect on track over the last couple of weeks. And compared to said a 7-year-old kid could probably race better than this. Grey Guys, of course, talk about and referencing what happened on the last couple of laps. And he said with the next-gen car and everything, these drivers are racing with way over their heads. I 100% agree with Grey Guys here for a ton of reasons, because I will say this. Cup Series, this has not been a big problem, but I've noticed it a little bit the last couple weeks on some other series. This NASCAR in general has a massive respect problem. You look back at IRP. There were guys turning each other down the straightaway. So I'm surprised that Carson was not get a penalty for that. We got drivers basically turning drivers in the wall on the straightaways. I don't understand what some of these drivers are thinking and really what they're doing right there by racing like this. It's not a great thing in my opinion, and I do think there needs to be more respect in this series. I think these guys should have to work on their cars in my opinion, which I think some of them probably do, but most probably don't now. It's just that these drivers race sometimes way over heads, and we want to see more clean racing and drivers racing each other more respectfully. Yes, we love aggression. We don't like over-aggression. You know what I mean? We don't like over-aggression and cars basically getting destroyed. So I 100% understand where he's coming from right there, and I think it makes a lot of sense where Grey Guys is coming from in that situation. So I get it. It makes a lot of sense, and I completely understand why he's saying this, because in my opinion, I think it makes a lot of sense. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the SRX. Now, according to Adam Stern, he put this out on Monday saying that CBS said it was very pleased with Season 2 of SRX, but did not address whether it will be back in 2023. They said the SRX investor Sandy Montaigne said the SRX will talk to CBS over the next month about the future, but that the expectations and expect a very positive outcome, and they think they'll be back in 2023. Now, while I've been somewhat critical this year of the SRX for multiple reasons this year, I actually am a big fan of the SRX. There just are some things that they are going to have to fix heading into next season, but I'm not one of those people that does not want the series to come back. I think the SRX absolutely should come back in 2023 because I think the series has potential to succeed. But they did take some major setbacks this year compared to 2021, where Season 1, they had a great season, didn't have a major officiating issue, where they didn't let fans really know, and we had to find out from NASCAR Chasm on exactly what happened there. And I think that there are things they absolutely can improve on. That being said though, and also the ratings have to improve, which they kind of did improve near the end. In fact, they averaged about 1 million, but they were still down from last year. They got to do better at marketing and promotion. That's the number one thing when they go into next year, if they do return next year. Marketing and promotion is going to be key. They absolutely need to make sure that that is a major incentive to continue having the series, and I hope that they do continue doing that. But I would love the series to succeed, and I would love the series to absolutely grow, in my opinion, and come back. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brad Keselowski. Now, Brad Keselowski, there was an article that was written from Kelly Crandall, who works at Racer.com, and Brad Keselowski did an interview with Kelly Crandall and talked about the actions of the penalties. Now, Brad Keselowski, of course, basically got a massive penalty early in the season, and you would think that Brad would not be calling for these, right? Well, wrong. Brad Keselowski is basically calling for more penalties to be handed out and basically said that there's a lot of gamemanship going on in the NASCAR Cup Series, and he says that this car is supposed to be meant for equal playing field. And Brad told the team after the penalties, and everyone at the shop basically said, because of course he's a team owner, he basically said that enough is enough, and you guys are not going to be doing this stuff anymore going forward. He said a lot of people were not happy, but he said that's a change of the culture. I agree with Brad Keselowski in many, many ways. I think that if you want this car to succeed viably for the economy and the sport to succeed for the growth of teams and some of these smaller teams as well, because you're going to have teams that are always going to be better than others. But if you want this series to succeed long term, you're going to have to send more penalties out. And we're seeing NASCAR becoming more strict when it comes to it. There's a lot of teams that are getting away with a lot of stuff in the Cup Series garage. And what I think Brad Keselowski is incentivizing is saying that NASCAR needs to get involved a lot more and start penalizing teams a lot more. In my opinion, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I agree with Brad Keselowski that probably should be more penalties handed out. It's just, can they catch some of these teams? That's one thing we'll have to wait and see going forward, but I definitely would think that there will probably be some more penalties in the future when it comes to that. Hopefully NASCAR can start cracking down on some of these other penalties going forward. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Jimmie Johnson. Now, Jimmie Johnson was basically being interviewed by the Tennessean, and Adam Stern and Allison Kanensky put out reports on this, and Jimmie Johnson said that he might be looking at a potential NASCAR return in the future. He says, I am open to returning to NASCAR. I don't see myself on a full-time schedule, but if the right opportunity came along, you know, I love driving and I still want to drive. I just don't want to do a full NASCAR schedule. Jimmie Johnson, of course, has been very open about this the last couple of years that he does not want to do a full schedule. But he has been open to potentially running a couple races. And right now, we do not know at this moment if Jimmie Johnson is even going to be back in IndyCar 2023. We do know that Jimmie Johnson does want to get behind the wheel of the Indy 500 once again and get back into the Indy 500. There's a lot of talk he could do the double next year, but he's had a couple races where he's talking about potentially running. Of course, maybe doing the NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader with maybe like the Project 91 car, which of course we have no more details on that currently at the moment, even though that car will be making its debut at Watkins Glen in 2 weekends from now. But also, you do have the fact that he's talking about running the Chicago Street Course next year as well, if that event does, in fact, end up happening. There's a lot of conversation that might not really even happen at this point. I would love seeing Jimmie Johnson to make a NASCAR return. Jimmie Johnson is one of the most successful drivers. In fact, I think he is the greatest NASCAR driver of all time. I do know that his fall last couple of years was not fantastic, but Jimmie Johnson is Jimmie Johnson. He's an absolute legend of the sporting world, and I would love to see Jimmie Johnson get that opportunity to once again have the opportunity to race in NASCAR. I think if he does come back, he will drive the Project 91 car. That's the most logical ride, because I don't think Spire will have two cars going into next year, and I look at Jimmie Johnson as someone who could even come back, maybe be a little more successful, because again, he's been used to IndyCar. We've seen IndyCar drivers. Some guys do well in IndyCar that come over from IndyCar. Some drivers, not so much when they come from IndyCar. That being said, though, I hope Jimmie Johnson does come back to NASCAR, does run really, really well in this series, and I hope he does get the opportunity to return to NASCAR and run maybe a select race or two. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about 2311 racing. Now, we talked about it already, going to talk more about Door Bumper Clear. Denny Hamlin was on the Door Bumper Clear podcast, and I believe it's Brett Griffin asked if they're planning to run an Xfinity Series program for 2311 racing. Well, Denny Hamlin basically said no. As right now, 2311 is not planning to race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2023 or in the future as of right now. And he said the reason being is because they need to see the business model change before he does go ahead and races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. This makes absolutely a ton of sense in my honest opinion. I think that 2311 Racing does need to focus on racing in the Cup Series. And they need to improve their organization, though. I will say their organization is really, really improving. Bubba Wallace had 3 straight races where he has finished in the top 5. And his performance has absolutely been increasing when it comes to that kind of performance. He's been doing a lot better in this series. That being said, though, also I do want to continue to prove just a little bit more before he decide to jump down. But I think that 2311 Racing, that's something that's probably in their goals long term. I don't think it'll happen for 2023 or even 2024 for that matter, because I think that they're going to have to work on some other things to make the organization better. But you look at it, they also have Joe Gibbs Racing, where all the Cup guys that are in the Toyota stable will probably could go over there. But also, if you expand 2311 Xfinity. You've got another place where you could go. But you also do have Sam Hunt Racing as a viable option as well for where you can really, really go. So in my honest opinion, it makes a ton of sense why they're not expanding to the Xfinity Series at this time. It makes a lot of sense. I would love them to be in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but I think right now at this given moment, I think the focus should be trying to get their Cup program a lot better and improve, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Oscar Piastri. As basically we have another very similar case to Alex Palou. Now, Oscar Piastri at the time has been the number one person as prospect for Alpine. And yesterday morning, they announced that Oscar Piastri will be driving for Alpine in 2023. Well, a couple hours after, because they announced this a little bit later in the day in the UK, basically trying to catch everyone off guard because Australia tied. Basically, Oscar says that he did not agree to this contract with Alpine. He says he will not be driving for Alpine in 2023. Now, Alpine is pretty adamant in saying that basically he's driving for the team, and he's been adamant multiple times now, including this morning, saying they're pretty adamant saying that he basically will be driving for them in 2023. We've got another case of Alex Palou right here. Now, to give it back to Alex Palou, Chip Ganassi Racing, they had exercised their option with Alex Palou, and Alex basically went on social media saying, no, I did not exercise my option with the team. I have no idea why they're saying this and why they basically agreed to saying this. This is absolutely crazy, and I'm just waiting for something in NASCAR to happen where we have like Kyle Busch announce the team, and then Kyle Busch coming out and saying, no, we did not agree. What is it this year with communication breakdowns when it comes to this? We got basically Otmar saying that he did not know about this. We just got so much going on right now in the motorsports industry over the last few months. And I think this last month in general, when it comes to silly season, every series and every top tier series of racing, I've seen more chaos in these top three series than I think I've ever seen before. And it's just been so crazy to watch everything going down. Now, where is Oscar linked right now? He's linked to McLaren. So you've got another driver that's linked to McLaren. You've got Alex Palou linked to McLaren. You've got Colton Herta linked to McLaren. You've got Ricardo that's still, we don't know if he'll be back next year. There's rumors he could be leaving the team and going to Alpine, but they're all saying that he's going to be back in 2023. There's also rumors he could be going to Haas next year and drive for them. Mick might be going to Alpine at this point. This is absolutely the craziest Formula One silly season that I think I've ever seen, and craziest motorsports silly season in general for all three series combined. Just everything going on, it wants to make your brain hurt a little bit with all the chaos and everything going on. So it's crazy to watch everything going down for sure. We'll see where Oscar ends up going out. I know that Williams has an announcement coming very, very soon. Maybe it's going to be basically for Logan Sargeant to go full time. That'll be announced in the near future at 3 p.m. British Standard Time. So in about an hour and a half from now, that will be announced. But it's great to see for sure. Well, it's not great to see with all the stuff going on. It's just really so much chaos is happening in the industry, and it's really chaotic to see what's going on for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Hendrick Motorsports' explanation of what happened to Kyle Larson in the Cup Series race on Sunday. Now, for those of you who watched the NASCAR Cup Series race, you probably saw that Kyle Larson basically had a major issue and basically ran into Ty Dillon and caused a massive accident. After what happened, Kyle Larson went over to check if Ty Dillon was okay, because that was one of the most vicious wrecks we've seen so far with the next-gen car. And drivers have been complaining more about the hits this year. Now, a lot of people thought this was going to be a brake failure or something. Well, Hendrick Motorsports is now basically saying that Kyle Larson's brakes did not fail and said that Kyle Larson made a mistake. I have to ask some questions here about the statement, because I'm going to call BS on the statement for multiple reasons. Here's something that needs to be said. Can drivers make mistakes? Absolutely. But there's no way the defending Cup Series champion, the driver who's won 3 road course races, a driver who's won the Rolex 24, where you have to make left and right turns, a driver who's made over thousands of laps on road courses in his NASCAR career. You're telling me that Kyle Larson just forgot to make a turn into a corner and basically had a mistake? I'm sorry, but he was literally hitting the brake pedal. He clearly said, I basically had no brakes, clearly hitting the brake pedal. Kyle Larson didn't even get interviewed by the media and went over to the team to figure out what's going on. My theory is that basically Hendrick Motorsports is kind of lying here to basically not get caught with the brake package. My theory is maybe they're testing a brake package for Le Mans. It could be a very big possibility. But a big theory I've heard is that the brakes might have boiled up. There's a big theory that when your brakes boil up, you lose all that pressure and air pressure and all that stuff, and therefore your brakes will basically fail even if you hit the brake pedal. And I don't know if NBC's telemetry is or not, but there's images coming out that the telemetry shows that he's on the brake pedal and nothing's coming out. So I have to call BS on Hendrick Motorsports statement. I'm sorry. Do they, and another thing too I've seen on social media, some people basically, some of them are joking, but I've seen people basically saying that Kyle Larson intentionally got into Ty Dillon. Come on. Kyle Larson did not intentionally run to Ty Dillon. That would be stupid. If Kyle Larson intentionally ran into Ty Dillon, should be suspended for the rest of the season. And honestly, he wouldn't have gone over and talked to Ty Dillon after he's saying, I don't know what happened. Basically because it's not intentional. And second thing, Hendrick Motorsports statement makes no sense. I just cannot believe it. There is something not adding up to this, and Hendrick Motorsports is completely lying. There's no way the defending champion, who hasn't even come out and really made a statement yet on this situation, he's probably being told to keep hush-hush right now on the situation. I'm not a conspiracy theorist here, but I'm going to tell you something. There's no way, I'm not just saying this because Kyle Larson is my guy. Many people in the industry, even Kyle Larson fans, who aren't even Kyle Larson fans, are saying that there's something not adding up with this. I agree with a lot of them. There's something not adding up here, and it doesn't make any sense to me. How does the defending champion in the Cup Series make rashes on car? Does not make sense in my opinion, and a really stupid explanation. And Hendrick threw Larson under the bus, so I can't blame him for being upset right there and really being frustrated if Larson's upset, but he's probably being told to keep it hush-hush, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Austin Hill. Now, Rich Hills Racing made their massive announcement, and it was announced that Austin Hill is going to be making his official NASCAR Cup Series debut at Michigan this weekend, driving the number 33 for Richard Childress Racing with Bennett Transportation on the car. First of all, car looks absolutely incredible. Second thing, let's talk about Austin Hill making his Cup Series debut. A lot of people were anticipating that maybe Austin Hill was going to go full-time with Richard Childress Racing in 2023 because one of the reasons is because Richard Childress basically said he was not very happy with Tyler Reddick in the announcement and still showed a lot of animosity toward Tyler Reddick, basically saying that he basically said that he and Kevin Harvick were continuing to have conversations when Kevin announced he was going to be leaving and basically said that this did not happen with Tyler Reddick. Now, Tyler Reddick also did say that he had conversations with Richard for the first time really since last year. Basically since last year, really, for the first time of conversations in a very, very long time. Now, I think that what this is to get Austin Hill some Cup Series experience. I've been saying there's possibility that we're going to see both Sheldon Creed and Austin Hill get an opportunity to race in Cup. But I think they're looking at statistics and saying that we need to give Austin Hill some opportunities to race in Cup. And a lot of people, some people think that this race could be like a Super Speedway S race, very similar to Atlanta. So they're thinking this race could be really, really strong, which I think it could be a really, really great race, in my opinion, for Austin Hill. Now, what are my expectations for Austin Hill going into this debut? Couple things. One, just go out there and get as much experience as possible. You're technically a rookie. I know you're probably going to want to go out there and win, but just learn and get some experience for the Cup Series. Because I think one of the reasons they're testing Austin Hill is I think he potentially could be the favorite to go into the A car in 2024. No disrespect to Sheldon Creed, and Sheldon Creed's been absolutely improving, but Austin Hill has been having a really good year in Xfinity this year. He's got two top 2 wins this year and a lot of top 10 this year as well, and where Austin Hill's in the points compared to Sheldon Creed. He's not too far ahead, but Austin Hill's been a little more consistent than Sheldon Creed this season and has had a better average finish so far this season. That being said, though, I'm happy to see Austin Hill's getting an opportunity to race in Cup this year in a 33 car. I wonder if there are going to be more starts for Austin Hill this year, and if this is not just going to be the first time we're going to see Austin Hill. I think my theory is he's probably going to get at least maybe 1 or 2 more starts this year. Maybe get started on a road course, perhaps, with Richard Childress Racing. Who really knows at this point? But I am very happy to see Austin Hill is making his NASCAR Cup Series debut. I think it's great to see for sure, and I'm happy RCR decided to put Austin Hill in the car. I'd rather see Austin Hill than Sheldon Creed. I know some people sometimes bring Jeffrey Earnhardt up for whatever reason, but I'm glad they went with Austin Hill, which at this point we already knew that this was coming like way in advance. We already knew that this was going to be coming, but I'm really happy to see that Austin Hill is making his NASCAR Cup Series debut in a 33 car. And also first time at 33 has been with Rich Childress Racing, I think, since 2014 or 2015 when Ty and Austin Dillon drove the 33 car back in the day with RCR. Because, again, that number went to Circle Falk with the 33 car there. And then, of course, it has gone over to, Penske for last year for Austin Cindric. But now they've got basically a 33 back at Rich Childress Racing. Some said they probably should use 29 or 30. But I think the 33 makes a lot of sense. It's an iconic number to the Rich Childress Racing band. brand, and great to see they have returned to Richard Childress Racing. Really awesome to see for sure, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story in today's episode as we're talking about Aric Almirola. Now, we've talked about Aric Almirola a lot, and originally it was announced that Aric Almirola was going to be retiring from the NASCAR Cup Series after the 2022 season. However, over the last few months and last month, there have been a lot more rumblings coming out that Aric Almirola has been considering potentially making a return to the NASCAR Cup Series. And according to the Door Bumper Clear podcast, Aric Almirola is close to being announced to return to the 10 car with Stewart Haas Racing in 2023. Now, why would they be saying this? Well, one of the big reasons is why would Aric Almirola reconsider? Now, a lot of us thought it'd be a part-time return for Aric Almirola. But one of the reasons I believe that it's being majorly reconsidered for him to return next year is because of the fact of the sponsorship dollars. Think about this. Aric Almirola has had a Smithfield branding here for the last 11, 12 years. Since Aric Almirola started driving for Richard Petty Motorsports when it was called Richard Petty Motorsports back in 2012, Smithfield has been the major partner and brand for Aric Almirola. And I guarantee what's going on is basically you have a situation where Smithfield really wants Aric Almirola back in that car. They've had major loyalty to Aric Almirola, and a lot of people theorize that if Aric Almirola does leave, that Smithfield is going to leave Stewart Haas. So I think that Stewart Haas Racing is trying to coerce Aric Almirola to come back to the 10 car in 2023. Now, the Door Bumper Clear podcast is not always right, but we're hearing more and more of these rumors coming from multiple people saying this more than likely is going to happen. Now, I've seen some people basically disagreeing with this move, and I'll say this. Aric Almirola this year, while yes, he's 16th in the regular season standings, this year's not been a bad year for Aric Almirola in a lot of areas. Aric Almirola's had more top 10s this year so far in 2022, and has been a little more consistent than he was in 2021. But his year's been kind of going more of a downward trend over the last couple weeks as well, but his improvement thing can happen. But when you have sponsorship dollars and money rolling in, and guys like Ryan Preece don't have the funding, because Ryan Preece, again, he is a reserve driver, but a lot of people ask about Ryan Preece, what's going to happen to Ryan Preece? Well, the theory around Ryan Preece right now is that Ryan Preece is probably going to, for one more year, kind of like be the reserve driver, or maybe go full-time with DJR in the Truck Series, or maybe full-time in Xfinity, and then in 2024, get moved up to the Cup Series to replace Kevin Harvick. Because a lot of people think, including myself, believe that Kevin Harvick is probably going to retire after 2023, and a lot of people theorize that Kevin Harvick will be replaced by Ryan Preece. There's also a lot of theories around Kyle Busch right now. There's a lot of people thinking that Kyle Busch maybe could have gone to the 10, but now I've got talk that Kyle Busch could be going to the 41 car in 2023 and maybe going in there instead of driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. If he does return to Joe Gibbs, so Kyle Busch has basically incentively said that he would love to return to Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023 and would be able to take concessions and take less of an opportunity to race. So we'll take less money, I should say, and basically open his market value and drop some of his market value that basically is available. But going back to Aric Almirola, I think that Stewart Haas Racing has shown a little more speed. I know that Aric Almirola, he wants to stay with his family, but again, he's also said, he's talked about this as well. They basically said the grind of racing there. But Aric Almirola never has said that he would love to quit racing. He loves racing. And I think that's one reason why he's been reconsidering. Again, I think the big reason why he's reconsidering is because of the sponsorship dollars. When Smithfield is basically wanting you to come back for another year, I think that it would be it. Now, going and talking about Aric Almirola more, if he returns next year, do you think next year will be it? I would not be surprised. Aric Almirola, though, is really, really young. Aric Almirola, I believe, is only 38 years old, so he really is a much younger driver. And no, for a lot of this age, 38 is much old, but 38 really is not that old when you really think about it. It's not that old of an age for a driver like Aric Almirola, who has been, though, in the NASCAR world since, I believe, 2005 or 2006. He started racing Truck Series back in 2006, and so far scored 3 victories, 2 of them on super speedways, 1 coming at New Hampshire, and was pretty fast at some of the tracks like similar to New Hampshire. But again, Aric Almirola is going to need to win to make the playoffs this year to make it, though. But I think when it comes to next year, if he does return, what are my expectations? Almirola, expect him to maybe slightly improve. I think Stewart Haas Racing will take a little bit of a step forward next year. I think the Stewart Haas Racing has kind of taken some steps backwards this year when it does come to performance. I think they have taken some steps back, though I will say Kevin Harvick has been almost top 10, and at least his cars have been improving on the consistency and the speed as well over the last couple weeks. But I think of this move, I think Aric Almirola coming back makes a lot of sense, and I think that he will do really solid in this car again. I think he'll probably be the second or third driver of the team, and at least all of the Stewart Haas cars are in the top 16 in points. Fair play to all of them right there, and I think it's good to see that we're seeing some improvements from at least Stewart Haas Racing Camp, and I think keeping Aric Almirola, because again, I don't want to see a young driver get in there, because I think Stewart Haas does not want to have a situation where they're basically in the same position Hendrick Motorsports was in 2018. I think the longer and the more veteran experience you get, the better I think some of these drivers get, and I think you have a much older and much better team, because it seems like some of these teams are a little bit older of an age do improve better. So Aric Almirola might be coming back. We're just going to have to wait to see what happens, though, if it is announced here soon. So, anyway, that is going to be for today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's get below over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Aric Almirola is truly coming back to Stewart Haas Racing or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Austin Hill making his NASCAR Cup Series debut this weekend at Michigan? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to have a video around Kyle Busch Tugger where I think he can end up driving in 2023 because there's so many rides he's been linked to potentially where he goes in 2023. Friday, more than likely, NASCAR news video, but I may not have a video on Friday. We're just going to have to wait and see. And then, of course, Saturday and Sunday, we've got race reviews coming out on the channel as well. Also, just a reminder, my first YouTube live stream is going to be on August 11th, so hope to see y'all there and tune into that. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.